everybody, Bumps of the Night again. I'm back with another episode review for the new Goosebumps series, Goosebumps The Vanishing. So, last time we left off, we were on Stay Out of the Basement Part 1. Now we're picking up with Stay Out of the Basement Part 2. Yep, had to throw in the Stay Out of the Basement shirt just cuz. I feel like I said this in my last video, but I'm just going to say it again. I am really enjoying this. Much more so than I did the 2023 series, and I had such high hopes for it. Even when it wasn't anthology and it was going to be episodic, I still had high hopes for it. I mean, Justin Long, got a nice little budget here. I was hoping big. But again, we flew too close to the sun of the 2023 series, and we learned that the hard way. So did we do it again? Well, not necessarily. Are the characters extremely interesting? No, not really. They all have their kind of little thing going for them. We've got the fraternal twins. We've got the Walmart brand Jenna Ortega. We've got the semi-handsome knockoff of Bruno Mars. And then we have the delinquent lesbian, which don't really care. Does Goosebumps need romance? No. Are they aiming for a teen drama? Sure. So is that why it's there? Probably. That or Rob Letterman's just a cuck. This one picks up right off where the first episode left off. You've got David Schwimmer laying there on his bench, completely knocked out. There's this weird, it looks like a worm at first, creeping out of his arm. Weird, tendril or worm sticking out of his arm that essentially, wakes him up. So when he wakes up, he looks at his bandaged arm and sees this thing slide back into his wound. And he's like, oh, shit. So he unwraps it, and he's got, it looks like I said, like worms or strings poking out of his arm. Technically, I thought they were roots or vines. I guess they're technically roots, but I'm not really sure. Essentially, he has this big, large tumor on his arm that he cuts open, and, got that green blood, so hashtag original Stay Out of the Basement, and he surgically removes this bulb that he has grown in his arm. Then he sends the microscopic findings from this bulb over to a colleague at the place he works, and they essentially tell him that this is not a plant, but it's an animal. So, nice little reference to the whole, again, original story, plant-animal hybrid. But essentially, whatever this thing is that came from the underground where the black goo was, that disintegrated his brother Matty, has now manifested itself into a plant-like form. Was it always like this? I don't think so, but this is the form it's taken. I'm hopeful as the story goes on, they'll kind of give us more explanation as to what this is, but essentially, the story picks up, the plot moves on. Cece is out doing her debate stuff, so Devin is worried that he may or may not have dementia. He's no longer trying to tell his dad about seeing Maddie underground. Dr. Brewer goes out to the pet store, and then we finally have that iconic yet cheesy dad joke of what plant should you always look out for? An ambush. Because, botany. David Schwimmer brings the same kind of dry humor Ross would in Friends to this character. I'm starting to be convinced that this is just how David Schwimmer is, and he just plays himself as characters. Not important. David Schwimmer reveals too much. His character tells his son, I've got to go to the pet store for research. And he's like, why? And he's just like, research. Meanwhile, we kind of get a little more exposition on the relationship between Frankie and Troy, or Joe Jr. Mind you, he's the guy who owns that Oldsmobile that he keeps parking in the Brewer's driveway, and Dr. Brewer's kind of fed up with that shit. So the plot really kind of picks up where essentially we find out that, I want to say it's Alex, the girl from the first episode who was filming being discriminated against in the store where she caught Cece on camera stealing lip gloss. We pick up with her. She's doing community service. A cop comes to speak to her and is like, hey, you wouldn't happen to know about X, Y, or Z here. And she's like, no, I just got out. Joke's on the cop, though, because she was there. She did break into the underground base with the other 5 kids, and she was caught on security camera. So the cop does know that. And then we find out that, essentially, the cop is her mom. So, fun little twist. Cop's kid went to juvie. We get to a point where Frankie wakes up, and she decides that she's done with Troy and his bullshit. Feels kind of forced. There's that teenage romance bullshit again, but whatever. She wakes up, starts throwing all her pictures of him and her. She's just like, I'm done with it. She goes and sees Troy at his job at the automotive shop that his dad owns, and she's just kind of like, yeah, no, this ain't for us. And he's just like, no, you definitely should let me keep trying. He's manipulative. They're not a good couple together, unfortunately, which sucks for them, but, teenage romance, what are you going to do? After that, We get probably the most expensive part of the budget they blew was the soundtrack where they used Down Bad by Taylor Swift. How do I know that? Because my wife's a Swiftie, and I've listened to more Taylor Swift than I would ever care to admit out loud. So much so that as soon as I heard it, I mean, I didn't catch it at first, but my wife knew instantly. And I was like, there you go. So, if the series ends up sucking and fucking nosediving, 1000% it's on Rob Letterman's need to try to include the next generation by using Down Bad by Taylor Swift. Mark my words, if this nosedives, his fault. I'm sure, like, it wasn't ridiculous. Thousands of songs out there, you gotta use Taylor Swift. I don't really personally care. I just feel like, you gotta pay royalties on that, and I'm sure it wasn't cheap. So anyway, Frankie opens up the coffee shop she works at. She's kind of sad, like, oh, I just broke up with my boyfriend. I'm sad dogging it. Devin and Cece happen to pop up. Devin and Frankie are flirty. Cece's like, oh, you guys have kombucha? That's her whole thing. She's just like this eco-debate nerd. She loves, like, that holistic, wholesome, friendly stuff. She doesn't do dyes or chemicals, won't drink coffee. It's got to be that nasty fart tea. Which, I personally don't like kombucha, so I am biased on that. I know people who do drink it, but I just think it smells terrible and it's fucking gross. So, I'm a hater. So, after Frankie and Devin flirt a bit, we see them outside the coffee shop. Troy's coming to apologize to Frankie. He's got a little bear. He's just like, oh, I'm going to make up with her. Then he sees, like, her hug him. For friends, it was kind of like a hands-on hug. I mean, I'm not, like, hating or trying to break down the DTR of the relationship, but it was a physical hug. He sees this, and his perception is she's like, oh, she's two-timing him. That's why she dumped him for this kid. So, throws the bear away, which in this economy, really? No, take that shit back. Get your money back, dude. Well, you're not very smart. He goes and he confronts Devin. We have a knock at the door while Devin's researching his possible dementia. Devin thinks he's had dementia because he's having, like, these moments where he, like, blacks out and is foggy. And he's associating what his grandmother has to what he has because you know how that thing is where, like, you WebMD yourself and, oh, this, and that equal this. So that's what he's done. He's on the FaceTime with Cece, and then there's a knock at the door, so it's actually Troy. And, of course, in Disney-esque fashion, they fight.
Excuse me, brah. You're excused. And I'm not your bra.
And by fight, I mean Troy bitch slaps him, which, negative points, dog. As the kids would say, you've lost aura with me, friend. So, Devin insults Troy. He's just like, in short, you're a small-town loser. And he has to, like, break it down in smaller words, and Troy gets mad. Then he bitch slaps him, which, again, weak sauce, my guy. They kind of tussle in the yard, and then Frankie breaks him up. Troy takes her advice, worried that he might be losing her for good, and goes home, which is right across the street. And then Devin is just like, why would you date such a douchebag? And she gets all twisted up, because her dad's not around, or her mom works, and she can't really afford college, so they have, like, a fight, I guess, and then Devin is just like, oh, man, I dropped the ball. So, now he's decided he's going to investigate the sewer where he was dragged and plant raped last night, and, yeah. Meanwhile, Dr. Brewer's returned, so while Devin's plowing around in the sewers, Dr. Brewer comes back, finds Troy's vehicle, once again in his driveway, and he's like, move your damn car. And Troy's like, you're harassing me. Just being a whiny little bitch. And I think, honestly, he was vindicated for this. He pulls out a shovel, goes to Troy's window, and like in the trailer, smashes it. And he's just like, you want to be harassed? Now you're harassed. Now I'm harassing you. You want me to do the other one? Get your car out my fucking driveway. And so he does. He forces him to move the car, which, good for you, man. Fuck them kids. Punk-ass motherfuckers think they can run the world and then cry about it. It's like a reverse Karen. Being a unk or getting older, I completely sympathize with Dr. Brewer. That's the kind of shit right there. I would have gone way farther. A broken window? You got off lucky. So anyway, Dr. Brewer goes downstairs. He tries to feed a dead mouse to the bulb. At first, he's like, yeah, no, it's no big deal. But it turns out that the bulb does eat the mouse. And he's like, oh shit, this is a problem. So once he realizes that, which felt very much Little Shop of Horrors, and I didn't get that vibe when I originally read Stay Out of the Basement, but this definitely felt like it was just a little bit like it borrowed it. It was a little on the nose. Pokemon and Digimon, same but different. Plant didn't talk to him, but it sure as hell ate that meat. And then he realized, oh shit, this is kind of a problem. So he takes it and he puts it in his freezer, which we saw in the trailer. From there he's decided he needs more meat. So Now we have the guy CJ who rides the moped and delivers the egg rolls he's always eating from his family's restaurant. He teams up with Devin. They're going to go into the sewer because Devin wants to investigate where the plant, gassed him. Dr. Brewer walks out and he's like, hey, so, how do you think, what do they do with dead dogs at the pound? What? You're an adult. Why are you asking your teenage son this? That's weird. You're weird, man. And Devin's like, what? And then CJ's like, maybe you could just go to the butcher. That's where we get meat. And he's just like, right. Because you're so book smart that you're just a fucking idiot now, apparently. Which, again, plot hole, but again, I get it. Gotta give the teens something to lean on. I took away points for that. So, now we're at the point where Devin's pounding around with CJ in the sewer, trying to find evidence of where he got gassed. Now we see Troy pissed off. He wants retaliation. It's nighttime. He goes over to the Brewer residence and breaks into the basement through a window. Frankie sees him, tries to stop him because she wants to be the voice of reason, and Troy's just being a teenage dirtbag. A full-on delinquent. He breaks into the basement, he goes down there, he starts trashing it. We saw that in the trailer. After trashing it, he goes to take some victory selfies because, again, dumb fuck. Hashtag dumb fuck. I said it twice. And then, as he stands directly in front of the freezer, it opens up and pulls him in. So, hashtag plant food. Frankie decides to come back because she's worried about him because she's still got vibes for him or whatever. I don't know. Teenage love, not important. Whatever. She goes into the basement. He's nowhere to be found. She tries to leave out of the basement because, mind you, it's got a key padlock on it. So there was one way in, no way out. One way through the window, no way out. She is looking for him. She hears a noise, and that's where we get that iconic picture of the hand reaching for her, which I want to complain at this point. It did look cool, but they made it look super green, which I get. It was a nod to the book. It was a nod to the original series. I get it was like homage, or homage, if you will. Once we finally see who the hand's connected to, it's connected to Troy. I thought Troy got eaten, and I was excited. I was like, that's what you get, you rat bastard. Because he was an unlikable piece of shit, through and through. I'm not sorry. Turns out he's just what I guess this iteration of Plant Monster Man is. Essentially, he is this amalgamation of, flesh and goo, but not, liquid. He's leaving footsteps when he stops away, but he essentially is a monster now. And he takes Frankie, kicks his way out of the basement, takes her to the auto shop where his family owns. He's trying to get her to essentially scrape all the shit off of him. He can't really communicate. He's just more like grunting and pointing and stuff. So he is a monster for all representations and purposes now. And he's not happy with how he looks. Then Devin shows up trying to save Frankie. Meanwhile, this is going on. Cece's out of it. We don't really know why. She's just not here. Doing whatever. Doesn't really say. Sure, that'll be important later on. But anyway, Dr. Brewer comes home. He's got a whole-ass goat missing its head. It's just like a skin goat. He's going to feed this plant. And then he sees the basement doors kicked open. So he freaks out. He goes downstairs. See the basement's kind of trashed. Opens up the freezer where the bulb should be. Finds Troy's clothes and a lot of black goo. Ew.
Brother, ugh.
And puts two and two together that Troy stole his bulb. Or at least that's what he thinks happened. Meanwhile, he's getting a phone call from the people he sent the cells off to. And they're like, yeah, this is a new species. This is not a human. This is not a plant. Whatever this is, you got to send us more than this. You got to send us a sample of it. And he's like, I gotta go. I can't talk. So, already just really bad with communication. Raising the flags, Dr. Brewer. Boo on you. We get to the climax of this episode where a couple of good shots of Troy, like I said, at the auto shop. Devin shows up. He freaks out. And instead of him just heeding warning, Trey sees him and gets mad because I guess even though this is a monster now, he still has some of Trey in him. I don't know. It was really tough to pull apart. But Trey starts beating the shit out of him while they're underneath his car, and while this is happening, Devin kind of rolls away. Troy's standing underneath the Oldsmobile, and Frankie, without even a second thought, pulls a switch, dropping the car on him, smashing him, which was whoa! Damn, kind of hardcore. Yes. And then right after that, he becomes a puddle. And then it starts to suck underneath the car. And it's okay, here's how. So obviously, he's going to split into two. His soul's going to go in the car, and the goo is going to become the monster blood. And that's what I thought happened. Essentially, I thought that his consciousness went into his vehicle. He loves his car. It makes sense. And the car, all of a sudden, the broken window fixes itself. It's okay, haunted car. Not how I expected the car to become haunted, but okay. Now I see how they were able to fit that in. I guess. Once again, we're doing that thing where we just borrow a theme from a book and try to tie it into a new story. Do I hate it? No. Do I love it? Would I prefer episodic anthology? Yes. But beggars can't be choosers and winners can't always be losers, so I guess we'll take the gray area here and split the diff. Overall, it was not a bad episode. I think it was a good, solid follow-up to part 1. Was it a 10? No. I'd say this is probably 7.5 or 8, maybe even 8.5. I definitely did enjoy the effects on how Troy looked. If you want to compare that to the 2023 when we got our first look at a monster, and granted this was its own monster, but when we had a look at the Haunted Mask where it became this fucking troll goblin thing, much more visually appeasing. I was genuinely shocked and interested to see what was going to happen. I wasn't like, oh my god, on the edge of my seat. I didn't have goosebumps, but I did enjoy it. So, overall, I did think this was a good follow-up. And I'm hoping that this is kind of setting the precedence where we've had 2 good episodes. Hopefully it's only uphill. If not uphill, at least it's standard and staggers across the board. We're looking for no nosedives, no whammies, no roller coasters. That was Stay Out of the Basement Part 2. Join me as I watch the next episode, then I'll break it down with you guys, The Haunted Car. So, as always, thanks for watching. Make sure you click those buttons like, comment, subscribe, share. And if you want to talk more Goosebumps or just talk about this with me, we're getting ready to do an episode very soon on the podcast where we just talk about this as a group. So if you want to get your thoughts in there, if you want to, put your 2 cents in or just hear what we have to say before it goes live, join the Discord down below. With that being said, I appreciate your viewership and I will scare you in the next one.